American car culture has found its way all around the world. It's a national treasure that has gone global and soaked deep into just about every aspect of modern life, and most people don't even know it. I'm Dan Stoner, and I've spent my life searching for the legends of underground car culture hidden in plain sight, and telling their stories that nobody else can. Some you might be familiar with, some you might not. These are the stories you've heard of, but have never actually heard. This is the Motor Underground.
When do cars become more than just four wheels? I mean, there have been a few moments in the history of cars that really changed popular culture in America. And in the 90s, the shifters and their hot rods brought rockabilly shows and vintage clothes, classic tattoo art, and a whole style that revived the best of post-war car culture, combined with their own twist. But every great story has an unexpected twist.
You know, there's a lot of funny stories. I do remember vividly their initiation process of the club. I remember it would always happen for some reason at Viva Las Vegas. They were like jumping in the new guy. And, you know, it was as bad as these college hazings you hear about. You know, the guy's stripped down to his underwear. You know, everyone's showering him with beer, or he has to, you know, wear a dress and walk around all day dressed like a girl. And then by the end of the day, he's passed out in the ice bucket with a bunch of empty beer. You know, it was the real deal. You know, and I don't think that many people that saw the initiation process were really that eager to raise their hand to join the club, to be honest with you.
I originally met the shifters at the LA Roadster swap meet in the year 2000. I had just completed my 28 AVA that I still drive to this day. And I said I wasn't going to go to the Roadster show until that car was on the road and running really well, and it took me a few years to get it together. And so I came out to LA Roadster show, and I'm walking around the show, and I'm walking through the swap meet area, and I stumble across these guys. And I said, man, you know, I read something about these guys in a Rod and Custom. And I said, yeah, these are the guys I read about. Check it out, you know. And Anthony was just debuting the bubble top car. Marky's Purple People Eater was still in gray primer, and they pushed it in there because it wasn't, you know, but the motor was up here and the seat to his car was down here. And I was just kind of hovered a little bit. I thought, oh, these guys are crazy. I love this shit, you know. That's funny. It's funny because I'm a little bit over 11 years a member now. And these guys kind of forget that it was 9 years before that I was coming out here like regularly. And I think it kind of boils down to the fact we're not getting rid of this guy. He just keeps coming back like a bad rash, you know. And finally, they did a show in Pomona in 2011, and they just dumped beer all over me and gave me a plaque and a belt buckle and a jacket and made my day.
Those 90s, we had beyond presence. We'd go, whether we'd walk into a bar, it was like partying of the Red Sea. We'd walk in the bar, and one thing about us, yeah, we were hellraisers. There were fights once in a while. And still are major beer drinkers, but we always, you know, we're not afraid to buy the guy next to you a beer. And in return, we'd go to bars some nights and never had to buy a beer. All the beers were bought for us.
Anthony and I are really good friends with Shige, who owns Moon Eyes. And at the Doll Hut one night, I was probably drunk, and I told Shige, I said, hey, you should take us, and I meant me and Anthony and the shifters, in that car to Japan. And he said, okay. And next thing you know, this was like a couple months later, we're getting ready to go to Japan. You know, and as many, I think maybe a half dozen shifters went. I mean, it was a great time. It was my first year there. I think it was the first time for everybody involved. It was such a wonderful trip, and the people in Japan were just fucking blown away. I mean, to see that car and to see the guys that they were emulating the whole time, their whole lives, when they got in that scene, to see them in person was probably like seeing a James Dean or something. You know, it was crazy. All I could see was the expression on their faces, and I mean, it was huge. It was like the Beatles. You know, it was just, they were around that car all day. We drove it in, and it was like partying the sea of Japan when we came inside. All the spectators. It was amazing. You know, we got toured around Japan And it was like they were rock stars. It was cool.
It was probably before that, where we realized that things were different. But that, for our club, that was definitely a turning point, and things changed. But as far as tattoos and the rockabilly scene and all that, it started getting stupid, like pretty early, like in the early 2000s.
So a show promoter from England created Viva Las Vegas in the late 90s. It was chosen for that location because it's a town that never sleeps. It was brought to our attention that a car show was wanted to complete this whole package of bands and vendors and the whole lifestyle. And we were asked to be the promoters of the car show. In 1998 was the first year of that event. 40 cars showed up. And quite frankly, the majority of people that wanted to go with the car were afraid to go because they didn't think their car could make it. The Royal Jokers showed up in true fashion. They said, we're going to make this happen. If you guys are driving your stuff through the desert, we're with you. The Royal Jokers get credit. Shout out to them for showing up that first year. But we only had 40 cars. The second year, 150 cars. The third year, 250 cars. The fourth year, almost 400. And it just catapulted to this whole culture.
What about the bathtub races that you guys had? Guido with his spaghetti wrestling and midgets that were running around. And the tiki, the giant ass
So the car
tiki.
show originally was on a top level parking structure and had this long ramp. And one guy
You could
brought
get speed.
an original turn of the century, 100-pound, or maybe it weighs more, clawfoot bathtub on wheels, drilled a hole, put a steering thing like a big rig, like a tea bucket, and then that morphed into Outlaw go-kart races at midnight on Friday nights, and we brought skateboards, little kiddie plastic boats where Tom Branch and those guys wore sailor hats or captain hats, and
then someone had an actual dummy bomb.
I had a bomb, a real B-17 bomb that we made into a cart. Yeah, it got crazy for a while.
And no one got killed.
No.
Well, I think as far as the music that I play and the music that I create, it's coming from sort of an old style that I romanticized about from listening to these old 78s and 45s. And in the same way that I do that and create my own music, I think the Shifters created their cars and their whole kind of vibe.
The doll hut to me was insane. It was basically insane. The few nights I was there a couple times during the day with Anthony, and it was much quieter, and he's just trying to take care of business. I was helping out a little bit or something, back and forth to his shop a little bit. He had, but the few nights I went there with them to hear bands play and stuff, it was pretty cool, pretty nuts. It's not a big place. It's not tiny, but it's small, and it's super retro, kind of cool old neon stuff like that. It had a very distinct smell. I can remember that, but a lot of people were burning weed there, so it's like, it smelled good, But it was the band was really loud. Everybody was just going for it, man, just like having fun, and and then you walk out the front door and there's 3 or 4 Shifters hot rods and 4 or 5 other hot rods there, and killer.
Things got so explosive by the millennium that nothing surprised me anymore. Brian Setzer, the Stray Cats, somebody that you just idolize, right? That you never in a million years think, yeah, I've met him, but it's just in passing, is calling you up and saying, hey, I live in Santa Monica. I've got this hot rod, or I got a custom. VH1 is shooting a video. We want the Shifters involved. You're going to follow us to my gig in Newport Beach. You're going to hang out. You're going to get VIP treatment. All this stuff happened. Actor, director, film producer Jean Favreau would write me, what you guys are doing is amazing. I want a hot rod. I want a shifter's car. This transformed it from rat rods, hot rods to a shifter's car. To people knew what that meant. You know, it was like, what next?
What the shifters were bringing to the party was something that ignited the imaginations of hot rodders that had been around from the early inceptions, and they were now seeing examples that really embodied that application of bringing it right back down to the street. And after all, we're not talking about a cream puff that shows up in a trailer. We're talking about something that could be driven and driven hard. That's what you get with the movement that is largely now pointed to the shifters as being a real bunch of mover and shakers.
You're showing up to someone's worst day. What's not a happy story, very rare is it going to be a happy story. You're showing up to one of the worst days for, friends and family of the victims.
Well, it was early in the morning, and I got a phone call early in the morning, and I knew it wasn't good.
There was some rain in the forecast, so I knew, that usually tends to be more car crashes, things of that nature. It wasn't a heavy storm that came through, but it was raining. And I remember it was probably around 2 a.m. I hear a call come out of the radio in Anaheim, vehicle versus parked cars. We get a lot of vehicles versus parked cars. Unfortunately, come that 1:30 time till 3 in the morning, that's pretty much our standard calls, are car accidents, people hitting poles, parked cars. So I didn't think much of it. But then they came over the radios again, and it said, drivers being ejected. That's a whole different ballgame.
I just knew, and I don't even remember who called me, but they started talking, and it was just, sinking in.
Start making my way to Lincoln and Weston, Anaheim, and I arrive on scene. Police at this point have it kind of taped off. So I get to my area where I can see, and I notice, this classic truck, front end kind of smashed up. Not too bad though, but decent. And I look over and I see one car that's pretty much sideways on the sidewalk, pushing the car in front of them.
And I wanted to yell. I wanted to say, do you realize what you're telling me? And I think I couldn't even stay on the phone. All I remember was running barefoot to the crash site where he told me that. And when I got there, they had already taken him away.
And when I start looking that way, that's when I see two legs coming out from underneath the car, or in front of the car. And the fire department was kind of standing around him, and at one point I saw a fireman come up with a yellow tarp and unfold it. I know what that means.
I called his mom and his sister afterwards, and I couldn't even talk. They were asked, his sister answered the phone, and I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't talk, and she kept saying, what? And I couldn't. It took me a long time to finally get it out. And then I just sat on the porch, just staring, just dazed. And our friend Ace came and sat with me, and we just sat there. Yeah.
Last night, Anthony was killed in a car crash. And what do you do? I've never been so shocked and numb in my life. And that was such a big thing for the club to deal with. Never in a million years did we think we'd ever have to deal with anything like that.
It's hard to remember much after that. In fact, like years, there's a lot of chunks of memory gone. So I think I was just on autopilot. So yeah, it was a whirlwind.
The next morning, when Anthony was identified as the individual that passed away in that car crash, I started seeing posts on social media of, this guy that was very involved in the hot rod culture, and he's, a pretty big name, especially in Southern California. And they used to own the Doll Hut, which is a staple in Anaheim of where bands go to play. And, I'd drive by it a lot of nights when I was out on the radios, and, it's a small little place, but always popular. So, every story impacts because there's friends and families of these victims. But when there's such a large following and community behind these people that pass away, it really can shape the way of how that culture, what they're involved in, ends up.
It was horrible, and it was absolutely horrible. When we lost Anthony, it was absolutely horrible. It's kind of, the club kind of died when he, passed away. And it's just kind of hard to, talk about that. I loved Anthony. I had so many great memories with him. And pretty much, I think that part of the club kind of died when he passed away,
Sad, like I see him occasionally, but still sad. It's kind of empty-ish, but he was a kind of one of the reasons that I want to join the Shifters too. So
I was very close to Anthony, not like these guys, in a different way, and he knew it. He knew it. The first guy in the club I had never met.
A big cloud came and sat over all of us, and especially the Shifters, because he was my rock, and I'm sure they felt the same way. Like, he was sort of a glue that held everybody together. They were all their own working parts of the club, but they lost a big part.
He was sort of our rock, we're all individuals. We can all, get by on our own. But Anthony was such a solid, no bullshit guy that really was a fantastic wrench, great mechanic that could figure anything out. When you get on the road, you have to have Marky and Anthony when you break down. If you got Marky and Anthony, it doesn't matter what's wrong with your car, they're going to fix it and you're going to keep going.
It was
and they were the tightest,
Because it was just like, we don't have to say anything, but we would just know what each other were thinking and get the tool and grind and cut here because we were just that tight and
on that wavelength.
And with him gone, it hurt a lot.
No one's been the same since. Me and Anthony met in the 6th grade. I was the one that brought Anthony. It was me and Anthony, and it was Marky and Alex, and then it was Jeff. Really was the core of the club. And then, from the beginning. And dude, I got pictures of me and Anthony from the 6th freaking grade. But he was sort of a very special person right off the get-go.
Again, after Anthony passed, the club did slump a little bit. People moved. Kevin went up north. Squeak went back to New Zealand for a while. And stuff like that. And we really did feel like we'd lost a cog in the wheel, a big cog. And it took a while to get over that.
A lot of things were changing in the club at that time, and Viva Las Vegas was a shit show by 2010. It completely had changed, and Tom Ingram basically took over and was running us out of it, is what I felt. We should have never let that happen because that was our car show. It was his Rockabilly event, but we started the car show, and because we let that happen, we let him year after year get a little more of a foot in the door of the car show. He ended up just taking over, and that was our fault, And I think we sort of blamed Axel because he was the go-to between us and Tom. He was the guy always talking to Tom, and we kind of felt like he sided with Tom and not us. But again, it's, kind of our fault because we weren't as involved. Whereas Axel was doing a lot more at that time, and we were just building our cars and trying to get there, which was a big undertaking. And then once we were there, we just kind of wanted to party. We were kids, we were young guys anyway. And we wanted to chase girls and have a good time. And so we sort of left a lot of it up to Axel. It was getting really greedy. Like, we never charged anybody for getting in the car show. Our thing was, well, if you got enough balls to drive through the desert and come all the way out here, just come on in, Which maybe, I don't know if that's smart or not, but that's what we did. And then when it started everybody was getting charged and everything was, they moved off the top parking lot, and then it went into a fenced area, and it lost the cool that it had, which was just about a bunch of guys having fun, going to party in Vegas. So right after that 2010, Axel and I had sort of got into over the phone, got into a fight, and I said some things I shouldn't have, and maybe I should have, maybe it was exactly right, and it pissed him off either way, and he decided that was enough. He needed to take a break, and honestly, we all were okay with that. We had had enough too, and that's kind of harsh to say, but that's the reality. We needed a break, all of us.
When the Shifters started building the hot rods that would change the world for generations, they put all those cars on Coker tires. 30 years ago, running a bi-ply white wall on a rowdy hot rod like this one, it wasn't just a tire choice, but it was a real statement about the heart and soul of its owner. The same holds true today. The right tire on your car is as much about you as it is about your car itself. The Shifters made the park tilt on Coker tires, and it's almost poetic that Coker got behind this documentary project. So make sure you subscribe, catch every episode of this limited series from the Motor Underground, and then go change the world on your new Cokers. And who knows, we might be telling your story someday.